Goldman, Brian Wilson, Mary Katharine Ham, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM. AM 630. WMAL.
8:37 on the Morning Majority. Michael Still is here.
Just bopping along.
Exactly. He's dancing. And so is my husband. My husband is in the studio.
Jake is in the house.
This is
Hello.
Jake Brewer. How's it going?
Oh, it's a beautiful morning here in D.C.
Okay, so we're having Jake on the show. Why? Because the end of the year is a time for list making.
To settle disputes is really what it is, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Well, and it turns out that Jake, who is lefter than I, we shall say, he's a little blue dog-ish.
A little more centrist.
Right, we have
He looks normal, though. I have to admit.
know.
He really
I know.
does.
It's deceptive.
Yeah.
We have a
Michael's
mixed.
a good ref here. I like this.
We have a mixed marriage of sorts.
Just for the visual, folks, I am sitting in between the two of them. So if you're looking at your radio dial, you know, you've got Mary Katharine on the right, and you got Jake on the left, and I'm sitting here
right in the middle.
Right in the middle, keeping everybody at peace.
Hey, you work on MSNBC. You're used to this kind of thing. So
Yes.
I'm informed that Jake has a list.
That's right.
Of our top 5 dumbest political fights of the year. These are the kind of fights only couples who live in D.C. can get into. Let's start out with number 5.
Okay, number 5. I have the general category of what I'm calling podcast fights.
Oh, podcast fights.
So to give you guys an idea of what happens is Mary Katharine and I will drive in the car, and there's any number of political podcasts, news podcasts, different things we'll put on and listen to while we're driving. And these inevitably...
When we're not listening to 105.9
When we're
FM.
not listening to WMAL. And inevitably, a lot of these things will lead us to heated arguments about any number of things. An example would be, let's say This American Life podcast talks about somebody who stole something because they were hungry. Just as an example, I can't think of any specific one that had that in it. But I might say, well, I can understand where they're coming from. Because, you know, they're just trying to provide for their family. And Mary Katharine goes, no, that is against the law. You can't have that.
Right, no, but first I stop the audio in the car so everyone can hear me because I have to have my own floor. Pause. Okay, this is wrong because I'm a radio editor. I edit the radio.
So you just cut him off right mid-path there. It's
not always
cut
me.
off the sound, huh?
She really cuts off the podcast.
Cuts off the podcast.
Let me tell you why this is annoying me.
It's true. Hey, I'm trained by cable news.
There you go.
I get to interrupt anyone I want.
This
okay.
is true.
Number 4.
Number 4. This came up. I don't even know how it came up, but we started talking about the United Nations and how generally ridiculous it is, and we both agreed that the United Nations does not really work for the world that we live in today geopolitically. However, I think that things will change because the only constant is that things change. And one day we will have a different system of world government than we have now. I don't know what it looks like. I don't have a suggestion, but I definitely think that the system of American hegemony is probably not going to continue as we know it.
Right, which was the only point he was making. But I decide that I have to give a lecture on how positive a force American hegemony is.
So I got about a 20-minute lecture on American hegemony.
Jake says, I don't know, there might be a new kind of UN someday. And I say, that's enough of that talk, sir.
Okay, moving quickly.
Also,
just substitute the N for the S.
People should remember how cheery and generally friendly I am on the radio in the mornings when you hear this. And I am that sometimes at home as well.
I would even go so far as to say almost all the time.
All right.
Smart man.
Number 3 fight. I don't know this one. What is this
Number 3. So I'm going to caveat this one with the fact that I'm a very proud, biased husband. And the University of Georgia, I've got a bone to pick, and I think it's a political bone to pick, that my wife is extremely talented and beautiful.
That's enough, okay.
And she is on TV, she's on the radio, she writes in magazines, and she is a proud graduate of the University of Georgia Journalism School.
Go Dogs.
And the University of Georgia Alumni Magazine comes to our house at least once a month, and every month they're featuring people who are appearing in the media, and it's people like, and I kid you not, and I don't want to degrade anybody's job here, but you know, it's a research fellow at the Center for XYZ, you know, or it's the this person who graduated in 2002 appeared on CNN on one show. And it's like, just once, guys. Come on, just once.
So how did we fight about this? I
Feature.
feel like this is a really strong position of yours.
It's a very strong position. And Mary Katharine just thinks I should give it up and not care. And I'm like, you know why they're not putting you in there? Because you're a conservative.
He wants me to work for it.
And I want her
He wants me to go out and demand coverage.
I think she should call him and just say, hey.
No, you should call him, brother. That's what you make that
It
phone
doesn't
call.
count. If they have to, it's like when you get flowers or a present on your birthday. If you tell your husband to get it, it doesn't mean anything. If I told them to do it, it wouldn't mean anything.
Well, but then when I say that I should call, she tells me I can't.
It wouldn't mean anything if you did it. All right, number 2. What's number 2?
All right, number 2 is just generally just Thomas Friedman. It's just the category of Thomas Friedman. Yes,
that's right. In our
Covers
house,
a multitude of sins.
We have fights about Thomas Friedman. This was an all-out yelling fight.
In fact, I thought we were going to wake up or bother the neighbors. We were yelling loud enough about Thomas Friedman. And I believe David Brooks also falls into this category.
So why did Mr. Friedman cause such passion in your home?
I believe my wife called Thomas Friedman xenophile.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a little too much affection for China's,
Yes. And I said, well, I think he's writing some smart stuff here. And I think he's got a couple good points that I think we should consider.
So you disagreed with her?
I disagreed.
Oh,
and then I disagreed strongly, and then I think we were...
Oh, strongly?
Yeah. I think I
As you can tell,
strongly.
folks, Jake's only been married now for 9 months. So.
Well, and I am the more ideological of the pair, and so I will often take... Gee, maybe we should look into the entire body of Thomas Friedman's work and say, I can't believe you love China too!
And then the best part of living, and sometimes the hard part of living with Mary Katharine, is that she remembers everything. So I could be talking about a Thomas Friedman article from 2011, and she could be referencing a Thomas Friedman article from 2004. And I don't actually know that this goes back 7 or 8 years.
And that's why you stop. At a certain point, you just stop and say, you're right, dear. You
All
know
right.
what?
That's
You're
right.
right.
We have a number 1.
We have another one.
But we're running up on traffic.
Uh-oh.
I think we're going to make the people wait for the number 1
Yes.
dumb political fight in the Ham Brewer household this year. And it has to do, believe it or not, with a regular household seasoning. Michael Steele here, playing marriage ref.
I'm just loving every moment of this.
My husband Jake is in the
Jake's
studio.
a cool guy. I like him.
He has a list fit to embarrass me. The top 5.
In his defense, I don't think he's embarrassed you
I
so
know,
far.
I
think
know.
He's done
very nice.
Very well.
I'm
Although on
picking
this
on him.
next one, I don't know.
It's the top 5 dumb political fights that we have had in our household this year. And we had podcast fighting, a fight over American hegemony, a fight over the UJA Alumni Magazine, and a fight about Thomas Friedman columns.
That's the one I find the most
We
fascinating.
are nerds. All right,
Big dorks, folks.
it's time for the number 1 fight in the Ham Brewer household. What was it, Jake?
The number 1 fight by far, not even close to number 2, was about salt. And
It's
I
about
don't mean Angelina Jolie. I do not mean nuclear arms treaties. I'm talking about the stuff you put on your French fries.
Actual sodium
Actual
chloride.
salt.
Yeah.
So, Mary Katharine, why don't you tell our listeners here why you were so passionate about salt?
I was very upset about salt. There was a Washington Post story about how the Federal Drug Food and Drug Administration was thinking about limiting the amount of salt that people can put in food, in processed food, because we're under the impression all of a sudden that sodium is so horrible for you. Actually, no clinical trials that say that if you cut down on your salt that you will get better or not die. But nonetheless, we charge ahead and take away salt from people's meals. Jake's response to my anger over the FDA overreaching is what?
Are you still allowed to pour as much salt as you want on any food that you want?
And I said, yes.
I said, that is as much freedom as you need.
No. And I said, no, you said it's just salt. And I said, Braveheart style, it's not salt, it's freedom!
That is not an exaggeration. That is
was
exactly what she said. And it was not It was not hyperbole. It was not, her trying to be funny. She said, "It's not salt, it's freedom."
Give me salt or give me death.
Exactly.
I see it. I see
The
it.
FDA will pry my shaker from my cold, dead hands.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, are the top 5 fights from the Ham Brewer household.
The
in
dumbest
2011.
fights of the year. That salt one was
And this
very
is just
serious.
year 1, folks. Wait till they get to 27.
It's going to be so much fun. Thank you to my awesome husband for coming in and not terribly embarrassing me. I appreciate it.
That's really cool.
We thought we would give you guys a little glimpse and, commiserate with folks who are maybe arguing with their families around this
Over
time
pepper.
of year. Perhaps over pepper.
Over pepper.
They haven't tried to ban that yet, Michael, but they will.
They will. They will. It's a conspiracy.
So I appreciate you coming in, being as kind as possible to me. Of course, this, the deck is stacked against you. If you were mean, what would happen later? So
That's right, folks.
Yeah, I had to remind Jake at the beginning when he arrived. Look, you do have to go home with her, so just be careful.
Exactly.
You do have to go home.
And I promise, I am a fairly positive and friendly person a lot of the time.
She is.
But you get me going on salt. If you are not sufficiently passionate about the banning of salt, I will get on your case.
I've gotten to know Mary Katharine over the years, and she is very passionate. I did not know about the particular salt fetish, but she is passionate. And I think a lot of folks out there, particularly in this audience, appreciates that.
Well,
I wouldn't love you so much if you weren't.
Aw.